All right, let's call to order the February 9th, 2026 special meeting of the Belmont City Council. I will turn it over to Miles to go through the consent agenda, and then we will have a quick, brief moment to amend the agenda. So, Miles, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Tonight on the consent agenda, you have 10 items. Item B1 is the approval of the January 5th, 2026 regular city council meeting minutes. Item B2 is a resolution to support the honorary designation of a portion of Wilkinson Boulevard as the Senator Jack L. Ryan Boulevard. The family of Jack L. Ryan requests a resolution of support by City Council as they complete their application to NCDOT for the honorary naming and designations of state transportation assets and employee memorial program. They submitted this application, and after discussion with NCDOT, there is a request for the council to pay an administration fee of $2,000 to offset costs associated with the program. Copy of the resolution in the meeting minutes, if you so choose to approve it tonight, will be provided to NCDOT as well. And when communicating with NCDOT, they stated that it's an honorary designation. It won't change the name of Wilkinson Boulevard, and it won't have any effect on any of the addresses out there. So I just want to make that point. Item B3 is the McLeod Avenue traffic calming request. This is stemming from the past city council meeting where council decided to move the traffic calming request and budget amendment to the February 2nd city council meeting. At this time, we're still continuing discussions with the residents regarding the petition. So we're requesting that this item be placed on the March 2nd city council regular meeting. Item B4 is the City of Belmont's Code of Ordinance text amendment for the towing and storage businesses, Chapter 117. As you can see, there's one change or a couple changes on the next page to Chapter 117 that the police department has submitted. So that's Chapter 117 amendments. Agenda item B5 is the paving project award low bid. On November 18th, the Public Works Department solicited bids for road milling and paving services for our paving project, and so we received 3 bids. And the bid tabulation included on the second page is awarding this contract to Abernathy Contracting in the amount of $1,026,766. The next item is agenda item B6, a budget amendment for the paving project. An appropriation of $326,766 in the general fund unrestricted fund balance is the fiscal impact summary. The proposed budget amendment will provide $159,428 in funding from the general fund unrestricted fund balance, $200,000 in funding from the general fund capital purchases, and $500,000 in funding from contracted street repairs, POW bill, to fund the 2026 paving project. The budget amendment also provides $170,338 in funding from the general fund unrestricted fund balance to complete a portion of the Abbey Creek Greenway project as it relates to the 2026 paving project. Revenue and expenditure totals will not change in the Abbey Creek Greenway project fund. However, this additional transfer will cause a reduction in anticipated long-term debt issued from $1,525,316 to $1,364,978. Item B7 is the approval of an ordinance authorizing the closing of streets and the sale, possession, and consumption of alcoholic beverages during the 2026 Friday Night Live concert series. The dates listed are May 15th, May 29th, June 12th, and July 3rd from 5 to 10 p.m. This is a request to approve an ordinance authorizing the closure of streets and the sale, possession, and consumption of alcoholic beverages during the concerts. The first 3 concerts are to be held on South Main Street, and the last concert is to be held on Upper field of Stowe Park. Also, the ordinance is structured to permit a location change for the July 3rd concert in case of inclement weather, and limiting the need for a revised ordinance to council at that time. Agenda item B8 is the approval of an ordinance authorizing the closing of streets and the sale, possession, and consumption of alcoholic beverages during the 2026 Garibaldi Fest. Let me see if I can find the date. The road closure will take place from South Main Street and Airline Street to Myrtle Street and McLeod Avenue, as seen in the attached map, and the date is April 25th from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. Item B9 is the approval of an ordinance to close Main Street on April 18th, 2026 for the House of Mercy Walk for AIDS. And that date is April 18th, 2026, as mentioned. And the last agenda item, B10, is the approval of an ordinance to close multiple streets for the annual Belmont Classic 5K, which will take place on April the 18th, 2026. And the map is also attached. So Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Miles.
Any questions?
Any questions for Miles on the consent agenda? All right, let's set the amended agenda, then we will entertain approving the consent agenda. So some amendments to the agenda tonight. The first one is going to be an amendment to D1, which is our closed session. We'll be adding another reason for going into closed session, and that will be North Carolina Gen Stat 143-318.11A5, establishing or instructing staff or agents on the public body's negotiating position for acquisition of real property or employment contracts. We'll then need to add E1 as a budget amendment and rename F, or E, that's currently adjournment, that needs to be F. So we will have, as amended, it will be E1, which will be, let's see, consider budget amendment for the appropriation of unrestricted fund balance to general funds capital in the amount of $1 million. Then adjournment will be now labeled as F. So do I have a motion to set the agenda as amended?
Motion to set the agenda as amended.
Second. All right, Alex, and seconded by Charlie. So the agenda is set as amended. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, now the agenda is set as amended. All right, so at this point, that will move us to the consent agenda, and I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda if there's no further discussion.
Motion to approve.
All right, motion by Jason,
Second.
second by Alex. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda is approved. That will move us right along to agenda C1, audit presentation. I believe Jared is here for the city for that. And just a reminder, we're still working with the microphone, so if you're at the podium, yell right into the middle of it.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to introduce you to Ethan Bumgarner with Martin Starnes and Associates, and he'll handle the presentation tonight.
Thank you, Jared. Great job.
Good evening. Like Jared said, my name is Ethan Bumgarner, and I'm here on behalf of Martin Starnes to present the fiscal year 25 audit highlights. We have issued an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion that we can give, and this basically means that the financial statements are free of material misstatements.
Excellent.
And I also want to thank Jared and his staff for being very cooperative and helpful during the process. This slide shows a summary two-year comparison on the general fund for overall revenues and expenditures. Revenues increased by about $3.1 million over last year, and this is primarily due to an increase in ad valorem tax revenues as well as local option sales tax revenues. Expenditures at the same time increased by about $4.3 million, and this is primarily due to an increase in public safety and capital outlay expenditures. This slide shows a 3-year comparison in the fund balance for the general fund. It increased by about $7 million in fiscal year '25, and this was primarily due to the increase in revenues as noted in the last slide, as well as some long-term debt issued. This slide shows the available fund balance in the general fund. And you can see the calculation there. It takes total fund balance and then subtracts out non-spendable items, stabilization by state statute, restricted items, and the fund balance policy from the city. And overall fund balance increased, and so did available fund balance. It increased by about $4.1 million. So taking that available fund balance number that we just saw, available fund balance as a percentage of expenditures and transfers out to other funds in the general fund was 72.1%, which was an increase of about 7% from fiscal year '24, and that's primarily going to be due to the top three revenues and expenditures, which I will elaborate on in the next couple slides. So beginning with this slide, the next three slides will show a 2-year comparison between the three largest sources of revenue in the general fund. The first being ad valorem tax revenue, and it increased by about $1 million or 6.5% over fiscal year '24. Here is the restricted intergovernmental revenues, which increased by about $1.3 million or 19.5%, which was primarily due to an increase in local option sales tax. And here is sales and service revenues. They increased by about $112,000 or 10.7%. And this was due primarily to an increase in solid waste fees and recreation department fees and memberships. Moving on to the top three expenditure groups, the first being public safety expenditures, which increased by about $1.2 million or about 13%. And this is mostly due to an increase in salaries and benefits. There were also 2 firefighters and 4 police officers hired in fiscal year '24. On the screen now is transportation expenditures, which increased by about $560,000 over last year, or 25.5%. And this is due primarily to an increase in POW bill expenditures. Lastly, we've got general government expenditures, which increased by about $557,000 or about 25%. And this is primarily due to an increase in expenditures for the city's comprehensive land use plan, and design expenditures for Project Tundra. Here are some highlights from the Water and Sewer Fund. Overall net position increased by about $3.4 million. This slide shows the quick ratio for the Water and Sewer Fund. So to give a little background, the quick ratio is a measure of how many times a unit can cover its current bills with its current assets. The LGC is concerned with a quick ratio less than 1, which would mean that the unit doesn't have enough funds to pay its current liabilities. But as you can see, the Water and Sewer Fund's quick ratio is almost 4, and it has gone up since fiscal year '24.
That was 100% increase in assets from year over year?
Roughly.
Sorry, tell me again what that would be attributed to?
The increase in assets, I can look into that.
It's a pretty big jump.
I believe most of that was due to the donated, I don't want to misspeak here, Jared. Donated sewer lines. That was the biggest portion of the increase, which was about it was about $2.6 million. And then the rest were just other asset purchases.
Okay. Thank you.
Moving on here, this slide is about the general performance indicators. So once the audit gets submitted to the LGC, we are required to complete a data input sheet with various financial information. And then once we enter that information, the website will shoot out any performance indicators, negative or even positive. But we are pleased to present that there were no general performance indicators, no negative performance indicators. There were also no significant deficiency findings or no material weakness findings. And the positives were high quick ratio for water and sewer fund and stable available fund balance percentage. And that concludes my presentation. I'd like to thank the board for allowing us to serve as your auditors again in fiscal year 25. And if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer those or get back to you if I can.
Well, I know I speak for the city and my colleagues by saying thank you. We appreciate your work. Jared, your team, everyone coming together to get the city to a clean audit. I know that was it was an effort, and it was it was a great job. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe a quick one for staff. When can we anticipate to get off the distress
ULA?
list?
Yeah.
I wish I had a good answer for you. As soon as possible. I think it takes a little bit of time once all the audits get in and then they go down the list. So we've asked that question multiple times to the LGC and our coaching staff there. So I would anticipate sometime fairly soon. As soon as we're off, we'll let you know. That's the main goal. I mean, we've had an awesome year. Of course, staff did an excellent job having a clean audit, no findings, which I think hadn't been done. I think Jared was looking back in the files, and it goes back to what, 2017, 2018, as far as we go back, Jared? Yeah, come on up, Jared. Yeah. Let's give Jared some kudos for this one.
Yeah. It's much longer than that.
Is that the?
That's what we sat
The
through. and,
naughty
yeah,
list.
that was the naughty list
Trying to
we
get off
sat
the naughty
through.
list. But yeah, Jared's done a great job
Yeah,
throughout
first of
the
all,
fiscal
Jared,
year.
since sitting up here, I remember we've had this year over year, right, since 2021 or so. And you went from doing, what, 4 audits, 3 to 4 in one year?
Yeah, we submitted 3 in one calendar year. That
Yeah.
was in 2023, I believe it was. And going back to the records, the latest, or I guess the oldest audit report that I could find was 2009. That's when Martin Starnes started doing our audits. And it's been since, we've had at least one finding in our audit report since 2009. So this is the first time in 17 plus years that we've submitted an audit with no findings. So
Congratulations.
huge-
Honestly, congratulations. You and your team have done an exceptional job.
yeah, so huge milestone for not only the finance department, but the city, and commend our staff and the hard work and the support of council and management along the way.
Great job.
Great job.
Great job. Awesome job. Well, I believe that'll take us to C2, you this time.
I'm here. Yep. Got a new clicker. All right, so we'll jump right in, starting with revenue sources across all funds. And the general fund tax collections, you'll notice they are up as a percentage of the year, and that's just due to timing. November through January are our peak months for tax revenue collections. This time last year, we were at 90% collections, and this year we're at 89%, so very similar metrics as the prior year. Intergovernmental revenue, that includes sales tax, utility franchise tax, alcohol tax, and Powell bill. Those are coming in as expected. Other general fund revenue includes sanitation fees, investment earnings, and other miscellaneous revenue. No issues noted there as well. In the water sewer fund, water and sewer charges for services are coming in slightly higher than expectation. I think part of that is due to the new rates that were implemented this year as a part of the fiscal year 2024 rate study. And also the practices of our utility billing staff of really combing through every single month all of our billing reports and making sure that we're accurately billing month to month. Other operating revenue includes interest on investments, penalties, system development fees, and grants. This is also over as a percentage of the year, and that's due to higher than anticipated system development fees. To date, we have collected $69,000 in sewer and $201,000 in water system development fees. And stormwater also performing well. You'll also notice those fund balance appropriations. Some of those have not been tapped into that yet. Those are budgetary only amounts, and we'll clean that up at the end of the year as needed. Any questions on revenue?
So sales tax runs like 2 months behind the calendar month, right?
Yep, and I've got a slide coming up on
Okay,
that, so we'll
okay.
talk about that in just a second. Any other questions on, okay? So local option sales tax, and as usual, I'll have to update my numbers because when I prepare these slides, the next month's numbers come out. So November has been received, and to date we've collected $2,795,560. We need an average of approximately $350,000 per month over the next 7 months to meet budget projections, and we are currently averaging $559,000 per month. So trending well on sales tax. Any questions related to sales tax?
No, I guess my point was we're already basically at half the revenue budgeted for that this year. We're in only 4 or 5 months into the budget year.
Correct.
So
Mhm.
that's a good place
So
to
it's
be.
performing well, and we don't have the December numbers yet either. This was through November. So typically December with holiday spending, usually see a little bit of a spike and then it levels back off throughout the rest of the year. Jumping into expenditures, as you can see, most departments are operating at or under budget. Few items of note: sanitation, that contract with Waste Pro is 100% encumbered against the budget, so that's why you're seeing it fully depleted. But it's just encumbered, so we still get billed monthly, but we recognize the entire expenditure in that department. The city attorney billed in 1 month in arrears, and budget penetration this time budget penetration this time last year is nearly identical to the prior year. General fund, 54% remaining in both fiscal year 25 and 26, and the water sewer fund, 56% remaining in 26 versus 54% in 2025, and in stormwater fund, 83% versus 77% in 2025. Any questions on expenditures?
Quick one.
Yep.
On the water and sewer fund, is there a reason why, I know you talked about updated on collections, but why the revenue's not pacing similarly to how the expenses are coming in? So we're already at 6.7 million at revenue and what, 4 million at expenses with 6 something to go, or 4.5 million? Is it a timing thing in the expenses that we're waiting to hit, or?
No, I think expenses are tracking as expected, especially when you compare it to last year.
Yeah.
We're only at a 2% difference compared to prior year. I think it's just better revenue collection practices in the current year.
Let me ask you this. I guess it's something maybe as we get towards the end of the year, but I know we adjusted the rates, and that study indicated what, a multi-year increase.
Mhm.
I mean, what's your indicator here? I mean, do you think they're a little high, or?
So we're actually underway with another rate study
Okay.
currently. So we've submitted a lot of documentation, including current year revenue, current
Yeah.
year expenditures to date, as well as analyzing 2025's numbers. So we'll be having some meetings with those consultants over the next few weeks, and they will be delivering a new updated rate study, which those percentages that we had talked about back in 2024, those could change based on these results.
Okay, cool.
Good.
I mean, it looks, and we're in a good position. I'm just saying.
Yep.
It might indicate, which we discussed, we'd have that conversation at
Sure.
the appropriate time.
Yep.
So gotcha.
It also doesn't look like we've expended any capital this year yet.
Yeah, and year to year, over the last couple of years, we've really limited water sewer fund capital. Part of that was trying to grow the fund balance. A few years ago, it was, I don't want to say it was in bad shape, but we were trying to improve the financial outlook in the water sewer fund. So limiting cash capital expenditures versus debt service for a lot of those CIP projects.
Cool. Thanks,
And
Gary.
that concludes my presentation. Any questions?
We're in
Looking
really
good.
good
Yeah,
financial
great
health,
job.
right?
Thank
I
you.
mean, if
Thank
you
you,
have
Jared.
to just step back and just give, like, the dumbed down version of that, right? I mean, all the numbers and then what the auditor said from our last audit, I mean, we're in a really good position financially as a city, I'd say, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's a testament of decision-making, hard work by staff, council, management. I think a blend of all three.
No,
Excellent.
Great job, Jerry.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. All right. Takes us to C3, Parks and Rec fee schedule discussion. I believe Jason is here for that.
Good evening, all.
Good evening.
The reason we wanted to do a discussion about this is, number one, we want to ensure that our fee structures are aligned with the services rendered and the facilities provided, as well as to generate revenue required to sustain growth, endure inflation, and provide additional opportunities while remaining affordable and accessible for all. So there's a balance there that we feel like we have to do between making it accessible and also being affordable enough, but also providing opportunities for growth, which we're anticipating in the next year. In doing this, in studying this, we contacted as a staff various municipalities. I went to a conference and heard in Charleston, heard Greensboro just restructured their fees, and they got to explain that. We got to sit in on some Zoom meetings with them, and we also talked to some of these other towns, cities, to see how they did it as well. The areas we want to focus on with this fee structure are particularly city rec center rentals, group classes, and sports programs. It's not going to be all across the board, but these three things we feel like we can improve on. So we'll start with city rec center rentals. The current pricing, that's what we've had. I think it's my understanding that's what was established when the city rec center was built. And some things that we want to look at specifically in these rates are to classify between for-profit and nonprofit organizations. We feel like nonprofit organizations, for example, we're having a Habitat for Humanity is doing a volleyball tournament at the City Rec Center. And you know, the more profit they make, the more they can help people with houses. So we feel like there's a difference between that than somebody that's coming in for profit. And our stance on that is if you're for profit, so are we. So they typically rent, the for-profit organizations will typically rent the entire gym or the entire facility out for an entire day. We would like to just do a per diem for that. Typically, staff-wise, that's a 12-hour day, and it takes between 4 and 5 staff members, depending on how big the tournament is. So you're looking at anywhere from $780 to $900 of staffing costs per day in that. Most of these tournaments are 2-day tournaments, and so we would like to do a per diem on that at a rate of $3,000 per day. It would be our recommendation. And then also we have a lot of rentals that are after hours, and those after hours rentals. When I first got the job, especially in the summer, we had a lot of those, and we went over budget for that first quarter on our part-time staff hours as well as our overtime hours because we were doing a lot of rentals, particularly in the multi-purpose room after hours. And so a lot of these cities we contacted, they have rates for that, and it would just cover our staffing costs for those. So our recommendation would be to charge an additional $30 an hour for after-hour events, just to cover staff. On the group classes, our current class rates vary. We have some that are free. I can show you our entire rate sheet at the end of the presentation. Some of them are $5 per class. The classes we currently offer now are senior stretch, meditation, a HIIT class, Zumba, line dance, hip hop dance, core, and most of these classes are offered 2 days a week. And so we're recommending that we do a tier program where people can just pay $5 for an individual pass. We have certain residents that just go to one class and they go consistently. And if they did that, they could do $10 a month for an individual class or $25 a month for all the classes. And we have people that participate in all these classes, and then we have some that just go to one particular class. But there's a lot of variance in what we're charging for those now. We want to be consistent with that in order to help staff communicate clearly with residents. We also looked at possibly doing different types of financial assistance programs. Some of these classes we have, there are seniors in there who are not used to paying, who are used to having free classes. We've mentioned this to them, and we've had some other people step up and say, well, I would contribute to this as a scholarship fund for people that were on a fixed income that couldn't pay. So if we're going from charging people that have been previously free, we also want to provide an opportunity for those that can't afford it to be able to continue taking the classes. We don't want money to be an issue on that for sure. Athletic teams, currently our rates for soccer, basketball, baseball in city is $65, and for non-city residents it's $90. The current rate for volleyball is $45, and for out of city is $70. Our recommendation on that would be to increase for all sports, including volleyball, to $70 for in-city residents and $95 for out-of-city residents. And that's just a $5 increase for everybody but volleyball. This will help cover inflation costs. If officials say, if we talk to a booking agent and they say we want $40 a game instead of $35 we've been paying, well, that's a 14.3% increase, and that just helps cover that cost. I put an example here. These were actual numbers from last year for basketball. We had 462 participants. The total cost of that, when you include staff hours, uniforms, and officials, was $35,305. The total revenue we took in was $31,995 with a shortfall of $2,310. If you took all 462, added $5 to their fee, that's the only one that came out exactly dead even. They're not all that neat, but that one worked out pretty well. And just so you know, our total participants in all sports last year was 2,172. And so if you multiply that times 5, you get $10,080, something like that. And that would help cover just, for example, sometimes uniforms will go up $2 per person a year. Our basketball uniforms came out to $30 per person. And they say, we're going to raise these to $32. Well, for 462 people, that's a pretty big impact. This is the proposed changes that we have. I know it's hard to see that, but that is just increasing adding $30 to the after-hours rental fees. And then the next slide are the fees to the sports teams, as well as the classes. And you can see on the bottom the senior stretch and line dances. Some of those were free. We're proposing that we charge $5 for those classes. And then that doesn't include the packages that they may want to do to save some cost on that.
Let me ask you, those were the only two, Jason, really, that I had a question on for like the senior stretch and line dance. Not to get too much into the weeds of this, but I mean, how many participants are we talking about at this?
It's actually growing. It will average anywhere from 30 to 50 per session.
Wow.
We've had recommendations that we build a platform because some of our seniors in the back can't see our instructors.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so it is growing. They've moved from the small dance studio to the large dance studio, and now they're in the gym, and they're taking up quite a bit of space in the gym. So I believe, or I anticipate, that all of these programs are going to continue to grow, or they have in the last few months at least.
No, I guess where I kind of want to go with it is to continue to keep it free, particularly because it is more targeted towards the seniors, particularly, as you mentioned, with kind of the fixed incomes if they're retired on Social Security or so. I think about programs in Kings Mountain where they have like the Senior Citizen Center up there, the Patrick Center. That's the only one that kind of like stuck out at me. But I mean,
Right.
I don't know what y'all's thoughts are. I mean, I could see, you know, that's probably a source for these folks that utilize this as a good exercise to promote kind of longevity, where they may not get otherwise and have to pay a lot more. That's the only thing I'm thinking about, right?
How
So-
much involvement do you anticipate in that scholarship program?
Yeah.
We've had a fair amount of interest in that because our instructors, when we were talking about doing this, they said, well, we want to run it by because they have regulars. I mean, they know their people by name, and they were open to it, and they understood that by doing this, there's the potential to create further opportunities.
Gotcha.
And so they were receptive to it. That we did have a few people that, you know, that I'm on a fixed income, understandably so, but I think that we could probably cover those that had a problem with that. But that is a concern, certainly, because
Yeah.
we want it to be accessible to all those people.
Do we have a feel for what it costs us to offer like one of these classes?
The cost of these classes, they vary some,
Right.
just because of the equipment. Some of the classes have very little equipment, some of them don't, and the staff hours are pretty much the same. They're different, so it would be hard for me to tell you. I don't have a cost rundown of each class, how much it
Okay.
costs.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking from like a cost recovery perspective, because like if it's the sort of thing where, you know, maybe it only costs us $20 to put on the class, then getting that $5 per person probably becomes less important.
Right.
But if it costs us, you know, $200 or $300 to offer the class, but maybe
Yeah.
that's a different conversation.
Right. There are some classes that require a lot of equipment, such as the HIT class. Our Zumba class, there's a $45 a month certification that we pay our instructor to get. So there's an added cost in that. But particularly the cost is based on what equipment they use. You know, some of these classes have very little equipment until they do some end of the year type things like recitals or things like that. And the cost of
Yeah.
the recitals is expensive.
Well, maybe that's the way to go.
Just segment it based on the
Yeah.
classes that require more equipment.
Yeah,
and
yeah. Like I
charge
know
for
you were
those.
trying to make it less complicated, but
Yeah.
maybe instead like tiering it the way you have it, like you could tier it by the actual class, so that like you've got the classes that don't require a lot of the equipment, those are free. But if you wanted to do one of the ones that requires more, maybe that's when you pay the $5 or something like that.
What's your feel for how this will be received by the current classes that come in now? I mean, obviously, if they're free, when you go from free to anything, it's a change.
Right.
And we want our facilities used. They look better when they're bustling and people are moving around. I understand the concept of that they're expenses, but I also understand the concept of a city service, you know, to the residents. So I guess you know better than I do because I'm not there seeing it happen. What do you think? How do you think that'll be received? Do you think there'll be people distraught over the $5 a class, or is it something that most people are going to absorb and say, we understand their expenses? I mean, what's your feel?
From the feedback we have, I think they're understanding of it. And so by doing the tiers,
That's what I was about to bring up.
if you have somebody that has trouble affording this, well, you can pay $10 for a month for a particular class, and you take that class twice a week for a month. And now you're not looking at paying the $5 per cost. So the tiers that we suggested kind of built in some of that as well. You can take one class as many times as you want for $10 a month. And now you're not paying $5 a class. So they were receptive to that, and our instructors felt like that the people in these classes understood the need for it.
To your point, I think it'll incentivize people to go after those tiers, so it'll actually be used more.
I mean, tier 2, you're saving, if you go to 2 classes a week, you're saving $30 a month by doing the tier
Yeah.
2
Right.
pricing.
And so for us, we thought that was a way to still keep it affordable. And currently, the way it's operating now, these classes have different costs. And so we were getting some complaints about, well, I'm a senior and I have to pay in this class, but I don't have to pay in this class. And that's why we wanted to keep a standard for front desk. We've got part-time workers coming in and out of there so
Yeah.
they can answer questions
Keep it
over the
simple.
phone. And our front desk had trouble knowing who should pay what, and people were questioning, why do I have to pay and they don't pay? And so that was where we were going with that. But I do see your point in that too.
What do we have, and you may have touched on this, I apologize. What do we have in place for people in our community that can't, in the event they can't afford these things? Do we have something in place?
We
Like a
don't.
needs-based thing?
We don't currently have that. Some of these bigger municipalities that I talk to, they do financial aid programs, and they just base it on the federal financial aid guidelines. A lot of the places that do the financial aid, they're much bigger municipalities, and they offer summer daycare and things like that, and that's where that comes into play a lot more. We would be open to that, but I honestly think just based on the feedback we got, this little donation financial assistance program would cover the few, I think, that we would have that struggled with it.
I have a separate question.
Okay.
For the athletics, do we do like sponsorships for the uniforms? I'm trying to remember. if we do that or not.
We've just rolled out in conjunction with the advisory board a new scholarship or a sponsorship package rather. And so right now we have two sponsors, Styles Roofing is a platinum sponsor, and we also have Land O'Lakes as a sponsor too, which they actually upped their sponsorship from $8,000 a year to $12,000 a year. We just learned that last week. We are working on getting more sponsors for the
Okay.
uniforms.
Is that included in those numbers you had for the, I think it was the basketball?
There's no sponsorship included in that. That's just the total cost.
Okay.
And maybe the only other question, not particularly pertaining it, but as Mark mentioned with the sponsorship, a number of years ago, we talked about potential sponsorships for rooms and stuff like that. Has there been any additional conversations to that?
There have, we're working on trying to do a better job of branding and marketing. We've talked with the advisory board about that, and there are some conversations. We're not there yet, but we would certainly put some logos on some rooms and some backboards and some courts, and we were not too proud for that. I'll say
Yeah, no,
that.
as we should, right?
Right.
So, okay, as long as those conversations are happening, I
Right.
appreciate that. Jason?
Somewhat unrelated, but also related. For the rec center, because we've had it for a couple of years now, and I know when we kind of first were building it, we didn't really have an idea of like what it would cost to run it. Do we have a good feel for that now, as far as like what it costs us to run that facility, and then kind of balancing that against whatever revenue we're collecting from all the programs and stuff we're doing in there?
As far as utilities, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, like utilities, staffing, probably even factoring in like the debt service. Just to cut, like, I don't think we ever expected to break even on that, but just kind of like knowing, like, are we subsidizing this at a rate of like 60% a year or 70% a year? Or
When you include utilities, I would say that it's probably below 50 at this point. Now, when you're including operational cost, we're very close to breaking even on a lot of these things, but that's not including the utilities, the debt, or any of that.
right.
But we could get it, yeah,
Okay.
I think we ran it like maybe 2 years ago during the retreat.
Yeah, I
so
think I saw it once. It was almost like, I don't want to call it a profit and loss because that's
Yeah.
kind of putting the wrong idea in people's heads, but like something like
That's what
that.
it was, a P&L
Yeah.
essentially
Yeah.
of it.
yeah, we can run it again. Yeah,
Okay.
we can run
Yeah.
it.
We do have, I will say, I feel like we have a good handle on what the utility costs and all that are, because budget-wise, we're right on pace. That was, established before I got here, but it's right on track with where we're supposed to be there.
Okay.
So really the ask tonight was that we do have the fee schedule included that showed the changes, to see if there was any appetite to have these numbers adopted. We could bring it back to the March meeting, or if you're comfortable with the numbers here, it could be adopted tonight. I know, Alex, that you mentioned that the senior stretch and line dance, you'd like to see like a zero cost. So that's kind of what we wanted to know was, were y'all comfortable with this? Because we'd like to go ahead and implement something right now and then to continue to study it. And then, of course, through the budget process, bring it back again to make sure that they're still in line. But that was the intent, was to have this approved sometime soon.
Charlie?
Quick question. What's the reasoning for the difference in the payment for volleyball?
I did not find an answer to that.
Okay.
I know that the uniforms cost the same and the officials cost the same, and that's why we suggested just making them all the same. They play the same amount of games, so I don't know why they were. I don't know why it was like that.
That's part of the cleanup process that Jason's been doing. Is
Yeah,
that,
great job.
We found that and we wanted to change it.
That's a good job.
Yeah.
So I guess we're at the point where we either a motion to approve the amended fee schedule as presented, or if we want to make changes to it, to move it to the
March 2nd.
March meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the fee schedule as presented.
All right, motion by Charlie,
I'll second.
second by Jason. Excuse me, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, so is
Can you just
adopted
keep
as
us
amended.
like updated on that? The one that kind of
Sure.
speaks out to me is the senior one. But
Right. And if there is a problem, I feel like we could
Make
make
it
some
work.
changes or make it work.
But just to kind of add to that comment, Alex, I think if you in your messaging about the fee increase, if you sort of couple that with the promotion of the tiered pricing, hopefully people get that message that, hey, I can keep paying $5 a class, or I can pay $10 a month. And I'm
To
have a
Joe's
quick
point,
calculation there. Well, if you come to all 8 classes every month, you're actually saving $30.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah,
And
but
The messaging, I think, is critical.
we have that conversation with people who buy day passes regularly that are out of city residents, and some of them it would be much easier to just buy a membership, but it's a high upfront cost.
Sure.
And so we've even looked at doing a monthly for that, but again, that looks good on paper, but it's harder to track for our especially our part-time workers that are up there checking them in.
Yeah, I get that.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Thanks, Jason.
Good job.
All right, moving right along. C4, discuss the findings of the fire station needs and location consultation. I think we have Chief Kennedy here.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I'm gonna start off and just give you a little background on how we got where we are tonight. Over the past 2 decades, let's get this teed up here. Over the past 2 decades, the city of Belmont's periodically evaluated fire station locations, staffing, facilities, respond to growth, changing risk profiles, and evolving operational standards. So 2004, 2005, approximately a little over 20 years ago, early fire station location and service evaluations identified the need for expanded protection in both the North Belmont and South Belmont areas. Fast forward a little bit, 2009, the city entered into agreements to support shared fire protection services in South Belmont area. You'll know that as the South Station, partnered with South Point not really partnered, but a joint use with South Point Volunteer Fire Department on South Point Road. That expanded the coverage area, which we currently have Engine 44 down there as our second engine company. Fast forward to 2023, not a lot happened between 2009 and 2023. An independent fire station location analysis was completed by a third-party fire service consulting firm. The study evaluated things like response times, service demand, community risk, GIS-based coverage, and those findings identified significant growth pressures, increasing call volume and coverage gaps in the north portion of the city. The study concluded that additional fire station capacity would be required to maintain service reliability and response standards over time. So in early 2025, several convergent factors related to the urgency for more detailed facility-focused evaluation. Things such as facility condition, where council received updates on the age limitations of the existing fire station, which is constructed in the early 1970s. That's the station on Keener Boulevard. Space constraints, accessibility challenges, and operational efficiencies were identified. Back about the fall of July of last year, council approved additional firefighter positions to support expanded staffing. So that's when the tower came in. The tower was placed in service. That was 8 additional staff, which added 4 to the main station. So a total of 8 are riding out of the main station now. Direction from council also advised the request that a professional consulting team be engaged to evaluate facility needs, test feasible options for both a new station as well as, a new main station as well as the North Belmont Station, and provide planning level information to support future capital improvement program decisions. That's why we're here tonight. So in fall of 2025, the City of Belmont retained Morrisburg Architects, supported by construction and civil engineering consultants, to conduct a site generic fire station study. This study was intentionally structured to evaluate options, not design a building. Validate needs identified in prior studies using current data, test feasibility across a range of potential sites and layouts, and remain site agnostic to preserve flexibility and avoid premature commitments. That's how we got where we are. So that's where we are tonight. And for the rest of the presentation, I'd like to turn it over to Matthew Hart and Kelsey Reeser from Morrisburg Architects. You got it.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having us this evening. Thanks for the opportunity to work with the City of Belmont on this important fire station study. As Chief Kennedy mentioned, Morrisburg Architects, we're an architecture firm located in Charlotte, North Carolina. We are not contractors, nor are we civil engineers. So we hired that out as part of this study and included Lyles Construction. They're a contractor located in Concord, North Carolina that our firm has worked with for a number of years. They are experts in the construction of fire station facilities across our region. And we also hired Peninsula Civil Design. Nick Vesely, you should know, lives here in Belmont, served on the Belmont Planning and Zoning Committee. We brought him on board to evaluate different sites associated with placing a new fire station either in the main area in Belmont or in the North Belmont area, which you'll see later on. So key components of this study included the review of the existing fire station location. Analysis was completed a couple years ago. A detailed facility condition assessment, which is included in your packet. It still has the word draft on it for discussion of the existing main station. We also talked with Chief Kennedy and his staff to talk operationally about their growth potential, both at the main station and also at the North Station, future North Station. We also looked at comparative fire stations in our region, not only those that Lyles Construction has built, but also others in our region that are of comparable size. And we also looked at planning level space and cost assumptions that we'll talk about here in just a moment. If we look at the station tours and peer comparisons, we've listed the 5 here that we toured and visited, not only with our team, but also with Chief Kennedy and his staff. I will make note here that the maiden Fire Station 10 that we toured in August of last year is the fire station that Lyles Construction has built most recently. And the others were those that we knew were of comparable size, to look at different operational challenges that those facilities have, look at the different sizes, how many bays do they have, how are they organized in plan from public to private quarters within the facilities. We also wanted to look at our current main station located on Keener Boulevard. We spent a couple of days at the facility analyzing it from accessibility and ADA compliance. We looked at gender neutral and shift-based living arrangements that the facility does not have. We looked at apparatus size, bay clearances, and support spaces, which ironically the facility does support the most recent purchase of the apparatus that the tower, the new ladder truck. But we also looked at site constraints that limit the expansion of that facility that we'll look at here in just a moment. Additional assessments that we received about mold testing did not identify any hazards, but we do suggest that we address concerns related to aging building systems within the facility over time. We do note that the building can remain operational in the short term, but it certainly does not support long-term growth or modernization based on the recent expansion of the fire staff, not just this past year, but also maybe for future years. We also spent some time out on the site at night and did a light study. That's the graphic that you see here up on the screen. I don't know if you know this, but there's a sign out front that it's a safe space for individuals who may want to go there if they're in a domestic abuse situation. They can go to the fire station for help. We wanted to look at the light levels around the facility to be sure that those are meeting the needs of the residents. Should something like that happen, is there enough light around the facility for someone to go and be safe walking up to the facility? And there are significant light levels around the building, but as you get closer to the street, it is a little bit darker that we noticed in our study. Another component of this study was to look at the program, we call it, the different spaces within the facility. These are all the existing spaces that we find in the current station. You can see there at the top that the total square footage of the current facility is just under 6,700 square feet. That's an important number to take note of as we get through this presentation. And if we have any questions, please obviously feel free to ask, or I can get through this as we look to compare this program versus other programs that we'll present later.
I have one actually real
Yes,
quick. As we were talking about some of the deficiencies with the current facilities, it seems like when we were studying this a year or two ago that there's a Chief, maybe you can help with this. There's a specific process, and I can't remember if this was related to like turnout gear, but it's like a cleaning process, and there has to be like a reserved area with ideally.
It's their decon.
Decon.
Yes, sir.
Decon.
Yeah.
And we don't have that capacity to do that currently at the main station?
They
Okay, I
can
remember
do
that
it.
being
It's
a pretty,
not optimal.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
Nor do you have it at the South Station.
okay.
So as we look at the program, we'll return back to a slide that looks similar to this on the other two stations that we're going to propose. So keep this in mind. But before we dive into those other areas, we wanted to look at the different sites. We did not pick a piece of property through this study. We wanted, as Chief Kennedy mentioned, to remain site agnostic. We didn't want to have any preconceived notions about where this thing might go. We did look at different regions within the city. On the map on the screen here, you can see that we focused our focus on the main station around downtown, with its proximity to the downtown area and the service area that the current main station where it sits. We did not show, obviously, the South Station down on South Point Road, but you all know where that is. We also looked at just north of I-85, not up near the existing community volunteer station, but rather somewhere closer to the Oaks Parkway district. We've heard through the study that was provided earlier that access to that area and then access to I-85 is very important for future growth within the city. So we turn our attention to a new Belmont, Maine fire station. This is the program that we generated based on our experience of existing station sizes within our region, as well as the discussions with the fire department staff about their current needs, their current staff, and potential future staff that we may see in the near future. I'll call your attention to the upper left-hand part of the page, 16,000 square feet. This is 10,000 square feet more than what the current facility currently has. We did look at adding on to the existing facility. The site constraints on that piece of property are pretty challenging. And to get 10,000 square feet on that facility would be near impossible without some exorbitant costs that you could go vertical. You could purchase more land next to it, but ultimately that station there has served its useful life in terms of expansion.
Do you have a way of estimating like the amount of acreage you'd need for a facility of this size?
I will get to that when we look at the different sites that we've generated.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. All right, this is just a graph to show the comparison of what the blue line there is the existing station. So those are the program areas of the existing station. And then the white that exceed beyond that is where the deficit is of what the new North Station would support. Okay, so just to show you the deficiencies of what the existing station currently has. As Chief Kennedy mentioned, this was not a design exercise where we're going to design a building and make it pretty and show you renderings. This was just a planning exercise to show different sizes of the potential stations. So I've asked Kelsey to come up and talk about the 4 different layouts that are included in your packet for each of the 4 different layouts that look at different operational opportunities for each of the stations.
So the first layout that we developed is approximately 16,500 square feet and utilizes a horizontal orientation and a stepping of the exterior facade. It's organized into 2 main volumes, the fire apparatus bays and its bay support spaces on the left side of the plan, and the integrated office and staff facilities on the right side of the plan. As you enter the building, you would enter into those office spaces, which are public, and then as you proceed into the building, you would go into the private staff facility spaces. The fire office spaces serve as a buffer between the two, with direct access between each other. The second layout that we developed is approximately 15,900 square feet and also utilizes a horizontal orientation. It also is organized by 2 main volumes, the fire apparatus bays and its bay support spaces on the left side, and its office and staff facility spaces on the right side, but is less integrated than the first approach, with public and private spaces separate with direct access to each other, but also direct access to the apparatus bays. The third layout that we developed is approximately 16,000 square feet and utilizes an L-shaped design. It has 2 main volumes, the fire apparatus bays and its bay support spaces on the plan north of the layout, and the office and staff facilities an elongated approach at the plan south of the layout. You would enter into the public spaces again, with the offices of fire staff and watch room being the buffer between the private spaces in the back of the building. The fourth layout that we looked at is approximately 16,000 square feet, utilizing a vertical orientation separated into 3 main volumes. The core of the building would be the fire apparatus bays, with public office spaces anchored on one side of those bays and private staff facility spaces anchored on the north side of those bays. While they are separate, they have direct access to the fire apparatus bays and indirect access to each other through the fire apparatus bays. This is also a preferred approach.
Yeah, and speaking with the fire department staff, that last one that Kelsey presented was preferred because of the separation of the public and private by that bay, the 4 bays that were shown there. And listen, it really wasn't about which one they like or don't like. It was about providing options for discussion to understand their operational challenges and opportunities that they may have with the different layouts. It also allowed us to look at different site sizes and site orientations. As we look at here, the option that you see on the screen here utilizes one of the horizontal orientations. Again, this is site agnostic. This does live in Belmont, but it's not identified as a particular parcel. That would be the next step of this council, is to decide where this station might want to be. That might incur additional land acquisition cost that we did not look at as part of this study. But nonetheless, we looked at the opportunities for how these 4 different layouts could fit on a particular site. To Mark, your question about size, this piece of parcel here is just over 2.3 acres in size, showing, as our Peninsula Civil Design shows, the different setbacks as well associated with the property, to try to be smart about placing the building on a site.
Matt, I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
The square footage on these buildings, roughly 16,000 square feet, does that have any correlation to the number of residents that it's servicing? I'm thinking in my head, future-proofing, right? Because Belmont is growing.
Yep.
We know that. More people are going to be moving in. More people are going to live here. These things last, the existing fire station's been there for how long now?
Right.
And it's serving a lot of residents. I'm busting at the seams, I'm sure. So is there any correlation there, or is that just like the layout that works best now?
I'm going to ask Chief Kennedy to answer that question about the amount of staff that we have projected here.
I believe in our programming, we actually added and took into account future growth for both North and Main.
And 3 shifts?
3 shifts, correct, yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I want to be sure I said that right.
But I guess to Joe's point, in the layout options presented, they all accommodate that goal.
They
right?
do.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Thank you.
So again, Matt, and you kind of explained it, but I think my mind's going the same way where Mayor's going is the different layouts doesn't necessarily matter. It's more of a personal preference to the fire department, or is
Fire
it
department
costing
staff,
difference?
There's
or-
no cost
so it's
difference.
just, these are options. that
Correct,
you
because
can-
we're all
okay.
around that 16,000 square foot range.
Gotcha,
Yep.
gotcha. Nope, makes sense.
Thank you.
Plus, it was a little bit of a design effort that we really like to design things, so that's one of the reasons we provided 4 options.
But it does sound like that last one we viewed as the more practical, that they view for their use, and having those spaces separated.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Which I would
Doesn't it,
assume we
come
would
down to the
go with.
available land, though,
It-
depending what you can
Sure.
fit.
Yep. It
Yeah.
comes down to land size, land orientation.
Gotcha.
So on the next slide here, you can see another piece of another property that's here in Belmont that shows that same orientation of the preferred layout and how that might work on a corner lot within the city to provide the access not only to the bays but also access to parking. And that's really, when we start looking at fire station design, how do you access the site, not only from a public perspective, but also how do the trucks come in and out, how the apparatus come in and out. So that was another reason why we looked at multiple sites, corner lots, not corner lots, to be sure that we were able to accommodate these in the operations.
And it might be a question for the chief, again, kind of for the expertise on here, but when I was looking at it, is it preferred to have a corner lot? Or does it really even matter?
As long as we can separate where if we have correct, it's more about getting out of the station for us than it is getting into the station. Now, we obviously gotta be able to get in, but do we wanna get in and have a lot of interaction with civilian vehicles? Probably not, because we got big trucks, so the corner lot's not necessarily a requirement, so to speak, but we can handle either one.
But is one preferred, I guess is what I'm asking?
Honestly, I would take either one.
Gotcha. I'm just curious, I mean, that was one thing that popped up on my head too, Matt, as you were just saying it. It's like, because that one that you had just showed us really was just one access way off of one street and a parcel
Exactly.
to the right of it. And this is 2 entry ways from 2 different roads, right?
At the end of the day, the idea is that this is a study to look at different options for discussion. The next step would be to look at specific sites that could be accommodated.
Gotcha.
And then let the building orientations fit within that
What
within that
fits there.
site.
Yep.
So then the last property is also a corner lot, utilizing a different floor plan. This piece of property is just over 1 3/4 acre. So we're somewhere between 1.5 to just over 2, thereabouts, in terms of property size. Any questions on Belmont, Maine before we go to North Belmont? Okay, similar screen to previous on the programs. The North Belmont station is a 2-bay layout. What we just saw was a 4-bay. This program is 9,600 square feet. So again, to put that in reference to what you currently have, the existing main station headquarters for Belmont wouldn't even serve the future of a North Belmont station in terms of size. Perhaps in the bays it can accommodate, but in terms of bunks and admin offices, it wouldn't even serve the new Belmont, if you will. So again, we'll let Kelsey explain these layouts.
So the first layout that we developed is approximately 9,200 square feet and is organized into 2 main volumes. While it's a reduced amount of square footage, we have integrated the office and staff facilities together, with offices towards public entry and private spaces towards the back, with the fire apparatus bays and bay supports off the side of those. The difference between these 2 main options is that one is approximately 400 square feet larger, but it is developed by the core. The first option has the lodging and accessory spaces as its core, and the second one has the kitchen and day room space as its building core. But overall, similar in design and concept.
We haven't heard if there's a preference on these, but in our discussions with the department staff and even in our tours, we've heard that those where the bunk room is interior to the building is ideal because they like it really, really dark in those rooms.
That's what I was about to ask.
So no windows in the bunk room. So I guess if they had their choice here, the one on the left would be preferred. it certainly generated discussion as we talked through all the different options on what they prefer and what they don't prefer in terms of operations. So similarly, we looked at north of I-85, 3 different sites. This site is about 2.5 acres in size. I will note some of these on the North Belmont are restricted by some constraints of utilities that we encountered, which you may find on any piece of property that you look to acquire. But what it shows is that they can still fit on these pieces of property. They just may be a little bit larger. So here, one way in, one way out on this piece of property. Remember, the North Belmont Station is a satellite facility, still has bunks, still has offices, but it doesn't require the main headquarters spaces that we saw in the previous design. Again, very similar to the previous slide. This is just a little bit smaller in terms of acreage. And these are all near the Oaks Parkway complex.
I'm sorry, can you restate the reason behind the larger footprint for the North Station versus Main?
More bays, so we're doubling the bays from 2 to 4.
Well, no,
Sorry.
I'm saying like in the Main Station, we were looking at a 4-bay layout on, 1.6 to 1.7 acres.
Yep.
Here at North Belmont, we're looking at 2 bays on
Yep.
2+ acres, right?
Let me
Typically?
go. So this one in particular, when we looked at it, it's just an open piece of property. It does have an easement in the back. That's the diagonal line.
Okay.
Ultimately, what we're showing is the maximum width of the property that we need to fit that station on this piece of property. It looks to be about 280 square feet. If the property you purchase doesn't have that easement in the back, obviously that cuts out. But what we did here is we found a piece of property, we made the width what it needed to be, and it
Yeah.
ended up being 2.58 acres.
Okay, I get it. It's not so much.
There's a little bit of a land grab here, in all honesty, with
Yeah.
this. Yep. And then the next one here, this station is set farther back from the road because of a utility easement that's running along the road. Again, it's site agnostic. It's a situation that you might come across in terms of when you purchase property, but we wanted to keep all of the location information off of these for the time being. Could you fit it on a less than 2 acre site?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you need that much parking, or is this kind of conceptual?
Conceptual, yes, sir.
Okay.
And then again, very similar. This one's getting a little bit tighter. You can see again that easement along the front half of the property. This one's down to 2 acres on the third option. Okay. So not only did we look at the program, we looked at layouts. We looked at how those layouts could fit on a piece of property or multiple properties within the city of Belmont. We also looked at a planning level cost analysis. This is order of magnitude cost, and this is where our contractor came into play at Lyles Construction. These are conservative cost estimates. A question, were these emailed to you? These were Friday. So you did get, does everybody have a copy? These should look like this? Okay.
I don't know if they printed them for themselves.
No, they're not in the
They're not
booklet,
in
but
the
they are.
booklet.
Would you like
We did
copies?
receive them in email. I mean, sure, if you have them,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
Stack of 5.
Yeah.
So as you're looking at those, I want to just highlight before Dallin gets in the weeds on different line items on the second and third page. The overall construction budget on the cover, I wanted to highlight that not only are we looking at construction cost for this project, but we're also looking at soft costs. We're also looking at inflation, engineering fees, fixtures, furnishings, and equipment, IT, contingency. And so the cover sheet is what we've provided you to understand the overall project cost that might go into a facility. So you're not just looking at how much it's going to cost for construction, you're looking at all the other costs that are associated with the project. So for instance, on the Belmont Main Station, we are suggesting a total project budget of $10 million, and that's then broken down into different line items on the cover sheet. The next 2 pages, I'll let Dallin get into the weeds on. But just to go over these soft costs, we have included escalation at 0.5% per month over the course of when you hit the midpoint of construction. So and this can change, just it's in a spreadsheet, but for conservative purposes, we suggested that you would be at the midpoint of construction June of 2027 for the Belmont Main Station, and that adds about $650,000 in escalation between now and then. Okay, that's a buffer. We've also included design fees, soft costs such as survey, geotechnical tests, building permits, IT design fees, special inspections, as well as, like I said, fixtures, furnishings, and equipment, as well as computers and things of that nature, to then total down a budget there at the bottom. Any questions about the cover sheet? I'll let Dallin explain the breakdowns on the next 2 pages.
Matt came to me when we were looking at this just because of our history and, the amount of, fire stations and departments that we have constructed over the past 10, 15, 20 years. We've got a lot of historical data, as well as we've got a lot of access to current real-time data of stations across, different counties, everywhere from Union to Mecklenburg, Cabarrus, Catawba. Now, again, just to reiterate, these weren't designed layouts. However, looking at, the typical structure of a fire station, the load-bearing masonry apparatus, you want those strong firewall separations, the overhead doors, the large kitchens where, the staff have room to live and to cook, and to conference rooms and things like that. So although we did go into kind of a more granular detail of what all of these items kind of entailed, which is what we found to be very typical and very standard in fire stations throughout our region. Again, I could go into a lot of specifics on each one of these line items. If there's one that kind of catches your eye, feel free to ask. But how this was constructed, both on the main station and we did the other exercise on the on North, is taking those square footages of the apparatus bay support, the staff and admin. The day rooms, all those things considered, and, even as far as, what type of ceiling was going to be used, what type of flooring was going to be used, durable and waterproof surfaces in certain areas, but aren't required in others. A lot of that was taken into consideration when developing and, cross-referencing, manipulated square foot costs associated with both of these locations. And that's how we've developed the kind of programmatic construction budget for the 2 stations.
So maybe just a high level question. So if I look at the cost comparisons, just looking at Startown Station, it looks like that's the most recent one at 2025 budget cycle, and then TBD for built. What's the main driver here for the cost per square footage of $377, and then the $435 and $520 for Belmont Main and then Belmont North? Seems like a pretty big jump there, just in a maybe less than a year, right?
Yeah. So Startown in particular, there was a lot of wood construction, for certain aspects of the day room, the roof structure, things like that. Belmont Main, Maiden Fire Station, again, very similar, but that was a much taller building in, by realm of the apparatus bay, almost too tall, and in my opinion, there's ways that, you can kind of save on costs with all of these stations. But, location, Startown, being up there in Newton, there's a location aspect, when these facilities are built, the regions that they're in, there's some cost drivers, with the types of vendors, the types of subcontractors and suppliers that you have in those areas. Obviously, being here closer to Charlotte, closer to Concord, you've got a lot more, opportunity with subcontractors with different means and methods. Startown was very basic. Had the right square footage. Wasn't, the materials used, the layout, the logistics, more open, things like that. All those play in the factor of the square foot costs.
So you mentioned the real estate values. Is the land acquisition included in the construction cost
No.
figure? Okay, so you can carve that out.
Yeah.
Right. But to your point, Alex, I mean, if you look at the differential on the same cost comparison slide between Belmont, Maine and North, as you go from the main estimated square footage to the north, I mean, that's 40% less square footage, but it's almost $100 more a foot. I mean, I'm sure there's certain fixed equipment costs factored into that. But can you expand a little bit on kind of that delta between the two for a station that's 40% smaller?
Yes. One is the order of magnitude, the size of the project. At North Station can't absorb all the costs that you have to have in just a full building. When you start expanding that by 7,000 square feet, that 7,000 square feet is able to absorb more of the cost than the smaller footprint of a project. I will also say these are very conservative numbers. We don't want to give you something that you're going to go budget for and it be 2 times more than what you budget for. We've baked in some conservative cost estimates here to be sure that you're going to get the value of a project should you fund this in the near future. So we're just protecting our work to be sure that you're able to budget for a facility, which is in part some of the reason for the increase. I will say right now is a very good time to bid projects. That Startown could have hit the right time for something you could have had a very a market that was very heavy at the time with a lot of projects bidding. You could have had a time when there's not a whole lot of projects bidding, perhaps at Startown, where people want to get that backlog. They want to give a good number just so they can get the work. Startown was a design bid build, was a bid project.
Correct.
So the difference between bidding a project, design bid build, and then construction manager at risk, or even design build, as you see there for Concord Station 12, can also play into cost and cost deltas between 2 different projects that might appear on paper to be very similar.
So these were bid prices. These don't include, like, for instance, the soft costs, the design fees, all of that, right?
Yeah. And we don't know the costs of the 4. Normally, we don't know what these costs are on any sort of given project. Sort of like the rec center, how much is that outside of just the construction? We don't.
Right.
Know, but
Sure.
Right,
We
so
wanted to
this
bake that
also
in.
doesn't include like the technical equipment that the fire department uses to like put out fires and that sort of thing.
It does.
It does. So there were a lot of conversations that went around the type of equipment. We discussed the decon room earlier that came up. Their specialty laundry equipment, their SCBA, their Cascade field machine that fills up all of their tanks, kitchen appliances, stuff like that. And, Matt does include allowances for those, what we refer to as the FF&E, your furniture, fixtures, and equipment, as well as, a lot of those IT-related items, the radio antennas, the access control systems for the facility to protect those outside egresses and things like that.
And this might be maybe more of a question for the chief, but like if we had a the Belmont North Station, would we also need more trucks up there, or are we gonna reallocate our existing
That is
fleet?
not a question for us.
I'll answer that one. So as of right now, with the 2 trucks at the main station, the ultimate goal, down the road, we would need another truck there. But in the short term, the North Station, one of the trucks from the main could fill that station as we can progress through time to get more staffing.
Okay,
So eventually, yes, to answer your question, eventually, yes, we would need another truck and another.
okay, okay.
Now, Matt, did y'all look at, like, what's the cost comparison to renovating, like, the existing station or adding on or going vertical? Like, is that significantly higher than a new construction, you'd say?
For that particular building, on that particular site, yes.
Okay.
And that really comes down to what this report is telling us, is it's just not
It's not
a
feasible.
feasible building to renovate nor to
Gotcha.
add on to. You're looking at adding 10,000 square feet. You're looking at adding a whole bay to accommodate, actually, you're looking at adding 2 bays potentially, because while it's a 3-bay station,
Mhm.
one of the bays is used for a day room and some equipment.
And then, of course, there's lot constraints because it's really just not.
Absolutely.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we covered that, so.
Yeah. We didn't do any further study after the report told us that it was not feasible to renovate.
Got you. Yep, I appreciate that.
I'm not sure who the best person to answer this one is, so you need to call the chief back up. Feel free. So I see we're looking at potentially moving the main station north. And my understanding was that a lot of what was driving the need for the north main station was getting a truck up into North Belmont. So if we move the main station north, does that?
We can't go very far because then we create separation between the south and the main, which we create the same problem there. And most of the growth is in that area, so we can't go too far north.
Okay.
Much further than, let's just say, downtown. So that's the driving factor there is, there's the response times, the minimum response times, we can't meet those in the North Belmont area, especially down to Crawford Oaks, down Hickory Grove and all that stuff. There's no way we can move the main station far enough to cover all that and still get back to the south end.
Okay. Okay.
Based on that information, we proposed the new headquarters to be in Belmont and a satellite facility to be in North Belmont, not the other way around.
Okay.
Not putting the headquarters north of 85, right?
Sure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Because I mean, North Belmont geographically isn't going to get any bigger for us, but the south is obviously a different story. But
And with the main big enough to support 2 trucks running out of there, more centrally located where most of the call volume is, and with your second truck, the ladder would have to go back to the main. It would stay at the main, and it needs to be able to get to either end. So to go to the south or go to the north, the ladder would have to be in the center.
oh, I
Just the
see.
main. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. That makes sense.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Okay. All right, well, if that ends your presentation?
I will just add that if
Okay.
there's any additional information that you need prior to the retreat about cost, just ask, and we'll see what we can dig up. I've heard a couple questions for clarification on the Star Town Station and to understand what that cost per square foot is. We can absolutely provide that via email.
Let's just look at it to
Yeah.
just see the difference, right? Because if what was mentioned is the different types of materials, not to try to like value engineer our fire station, but options are always nice, right? So what's the, maybe, the lower one, what's the middle, what's the high? As opposed to just one final one, I think would be helpful for me in trying to make those decisions. Obviously, with the chief's input. I mean, at the end of the day, it needs to work for y'all. We're not professionals by any means of what you guys need, but I think options are helpful. And then obviously, what is the proposed land or places that these need to be, right? So,
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
thank you.
So for the next time you see these numbers, they'll be at the retreat. We will see that $10 million plugged into our financial capital model. Plus you'll see the $7,250,000 for the North Main Station plugged in for that. We also have 2 cells for land acquisition on each one of these, and we've got a plug number in there right now because we, like we say, we don't know exactly where it'll be. So I think we plugged, excuse me, I think $500,000 for each one of those, yeah, for land acquisition.
All right. Moving right along, C5, Police Department Annual Report Presentation, Chief Falls.
I think I'm gonna mimic Jason a little bit. Good evening, everyone. Instead of all, but I don't want to leave anybody out. So, it's great to stand before you today and go over some of the stats and some of the things that we've accomplished throughout last year. So I'm gonna present the annual report. First and foremost, I want to go over the mission statement. Is the mission of the Belmont Police Department to protect and serve with dignity, respect, and fairness. The department vision: the Belmont Police Department strives to reduce fear, promote safety, and enhance the quality of life through a commitment of enforcing laws, preventing crime, and building community partnerships. This is just a little overview of our administrative team. Of course, there's the handsome guy on the left there.
Handsome.
I'll know that guy. And then the Assistant Chief Arthur Pullen, Captain Black, Captain Matt Sherrill, and some of the different things that they're certified in, if you want to review that later. Also, Lieutenant Alan Buchanan, Tony Cape, my Administrative Assistant Victoria Rumfeld, and of course, CLIA Accreditation Manager Tyler Graham. This is just a breakdown of our organizational chart and how everything operates and who reports to who. I'll be glad to go over that if you got any questions. If not, I'm gonna move on. This is our picture of the department. Just kind of give you this as a brief overview to kind of let you know how big the department is, because you know you don't see everyone all the time. You see different ones, so just kind of put that up there. Some of these people are still employed. Some of them are not. Just for different reasons. Police department demographics: there's 50 full-time sworn officers, 10 part-time or reserve officers. There's 6 full-time civilian employees, 5 part-time civilian employees, 4 part-time school crossing guards. Currently, we only have 3. We're looking for one, so if anyone in the public that's out there watching or anyone here knows of anyone, it took us about 1.5 years to search for the last one. We got them. So we're looking for one still down by the high school. Our minority employment rate is 26.6, so it's right in line with what the national average is of 27. Then to the structure, the chief of police is broke down. The assistant chief is 1. We have 2 captains, 2 lieutenants, 6 sergeants, 4 corporals, 34 police officers, 5 civilian or support employees, 1.5 code enforcement officers, and 4 crossing guards, and of course 4 canine dogs. The divisions that we have and opportunities for advancement at the police department our patrol, community unit, traffic division, our canine unit, our school resource officers, and then our support services division, which the captain over that is Matt Sherrill, is our criminal investigations, our vice narcotics, and our code enforcement. Patrol, our shifts currently operate on a 12-hour permanent shift schedule. We did adjust that probably about 5 or 6 months ago from a rotating shift every 28 days. It just seemed to be more in line with and more healthy for the officers from having to switch once a month. And minimum, go ahead.
Sorry, what does that mean?
So our officers, every 28 days, they would go from day shift to night shift.
Okay.
So they had to switch and adjust their schedules. And most of the agencies in the county, I think Mount Holly is the only one that still does the rotating shifts. At one time, a long time ago, we switched every 2 weeks, and that just didn't work out really good, especially for sleeping habits and things and health reasons of the officers. And then it was switching every 28 days, and so we actually did some surveys and different things at the department and put into place a 12-hour permanent shift as a temporary thing, and then it's worked out. I said we'll look at it, we'll do it, we'll implement it and see if it worked out. And so far, we haven't had a lot of issues with any of the permanent shifts. And a lot of people, some people want to work at night so they can be away from the bosses in the day. And then some people, seriously, I've been there. And then there's people who want to work during the daytime for, people who have kids, and, some of your younger officers want to work at night. And then our minimum staffing, each shift consists of 5 officers, a sergeant, a corporal, and 3 officers. And each shift must have at least 4 officers to meet staffing requirements. And normally that's just for nighttime. We have a lot more staff here that overlap in different units and things that are here for evening hours. And during the daytime, there's a lot more officers with support staff and such. That's just giving you an idea of what our minimum staffing requirements are. In 2024-2025, our cost for service, we had 2024 we had 57,903 costs for service, and in 2025 we had 133, and the third highest agency with calls for service in the county, and the second highest for officer initiated calls in the county with 39,891. And I think the difference between the years, the reason it went down is because we had a little bit of a staffing level issue at one time.
Hey, Chief, is Gastonia number 1 and Mount Holly number 2?
Actually, it's the city and the Gastonia city, and
okay.
and then you have the county police, and then you have us.
So it's Gastonia, the city,
Gastonia
county,
City,
and then us.
the county, and then us. Our data tables, our DWIs, we had 85 in 2024, and then 93. So there's a uptick in us catching DWIs. And the total traffic stops were 3982, and then in 2025, 4826. Total citations issued this time 3195, which was an increase, and then total violations were just slightly down with 3,000. And then this is night checking stations is some of the things that we do with some of our programs. We're involved with the DWI traffic enforcement grant and and all of that with the Motor Highway Safety. We're required to do certain amounts of check-in stations and things like that throughout the year, and then the Batmobile, and all of the fatalities. One thing I'd like to note about the fatalities is one of the fatalities. Let me go back to my notes really. One of the fatalities was on the interstate at I-85 near exit 26. And the other unfortunate fatality was at Napa at Browntown Road, where a vehicle pulled out and was struck from Napa by Browntown Road. And I-85 South, our personal injury collisions went down, and property damage collisions went down from 126 overall to 33, and that's southbound, and then northbound from 73 to 40, it went down. And then this is just an overview of our Vice Narcotics unit and what they've accomplished throughout the year. And if you want me to go over any of that, or you have any questions, let me know. Go ahead.
Do you have an idea of why that decreased so much on the I-85 South year over year?
I don't, other than just a presence maybe.
Okay.
There's no difference in traffic. At one time, the stats went down a couple of years ago because they restriped the I-85. But I'd imagine when they start widening the interstate, those stats will go up some.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Everybody's driving 10 miles an hour on 95.
Well, there's that. Yeah, there's that.
On the drugs, it looks like fentanyl is down pretty significantly, but there's almost a trade-off for some of the other.
It's just that's one of those things. It's just what's selling the best at the time. We don't really control that. You really don't know. And sometimes it's just a game of luck where you catch one thing more than the other this time or next time. And some of that's contributed to other locations outside of our country, what they're pushing at the time.
Is most of this seized through trafficking on the interstate, or would you say this is stuff that's in our community, like deep into our community and neighborhoods and stuff like that?
How much of it's transitory?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say this is from we're involved in in different task force, the DEA task force, and all kinds of different task force like that on a federal level. So we all cohesively deal with the drugs, whether they're coming from here, they're coming from Charlotte, they're being sold here, sold somewhere else. We all work together. Everyone in the county, all the different agencies in the county, as well as the federal agencies in Charlotte, just regionally, we work together. So a lot of what you see are some of those, but it's not to say that drugs are not in Belmont. By all means, they're everywhere. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that every one of these drugs were seized in Belmont.
Okay.
They were seized through long, extensive operations and investigations into drugs. And, one day you might have someone come in to buy drugs or selling drugs from a location, and then they may travel to Charlotte and, you know, back and forth. So it's really, it's like a game of cat and mouse, honestly. And then what you get is just whoever's pushing the drugs at that time, what they're actually selling and it's all marketable.
Gotcha.
Chief, I think I brought this up last year, but I think it's a good reminder regarding the seizures. So currency, I think you had explained before that that's kind of allocated based on each agency's proportionate time devoted to a particular seizure, right?
Yes.
In terms of how much comes back to the...
And I'll give you an example of that because you can't look at the big picture. We had a $500,000 seizure a few years ago, y'all may remember. We had not quite $15,000, it was our portion of that. We just made a $500,000 within, you know, the different investigative groups. We made a $500,000 seizure a couple of weeks ago. I think this past week we made 1.2 or $1.4 million seizure.
Wow.
I don't know, I have a picture on my phone. It's quite impressive if y'all like to see it. The amount of cash that's laying out on the table. I was flabbergasted at what that looks like in person. I've never seen that much money laying on the table, that's what I'll tell you.
But we got $500,000 out of that?
We're involved in that. So when those, and then that stuff takes time. It may be 6 months, it might be a year before the court cases have, and then everything's divvied out to the different agencies. So we might not see but $20,000. You really don't know it, just like what you said, like I explained before. It really depends on how much time and investigative purposes or time that our officers spent versus a different agency, and basically like kind of what our cut is. So it's all divvied out and percentages based on all the different factors.
Where do those seized assets go?
Where do they go? Asset forfeiture.
Asset forfeiture.
Asset forfeiture.
So it stays within the police department, right?
Yes, we get a portion of, when we get those funds, it goes into an asset forfeiture account. We have a state account and a federal account, and they have to be separate.
And you can only use those funds for like certain things.
They're restricted. I can't be restricted as to what I use them for, but I am restricted in like certain things, like with the federal funds. State funds, I can use those things for, you know, for law enforcement training and different things like that. On a federal level, there's more restrictive uses just to make sure that people are utilizing the asset forfeiture funds for the proper thing. So it's audited, and you have to fill out an ESAC form, which Jared's very familiar with. So we have to fill out the ESAC forms every year and make sure we're in compliance, and then, you know, if not, you get audited and things like that. So there's a lot of different factors. I'm actually over it and have been since I came back here. It's been quite a feat to get squared away, but now it's in line and everything's good.
And then lastly, what happens to the vehicles and the firearms? Do they get sold or go to auction with the vehicles, or?
Like I said, with the different entities, like if you seize so many different, like we seized so many cars, then it just really depends on if an agency wants a different car. Like if, say you had a Tahoe and you wanted to get a different car because you're always changing, the DEA and also our officers, our narcotics officers, are always forever trying to change cars and switch them around. So say we have a Jeep Cherokee right now that we seized and we really don't use it anymore that much, but it's still in use and has a purpose because we can switch out those cars with different agencies. And the drug dealers in Gastonia might not be familiar with the Jeep Cherokee that we use.
So you're repurposing those seized vehicles?
100%. I will tell you that a few years ago we seized a vehicle, and the feds told us we could have it instead of some asset forfeiture cash, and then we ended up, the thing they left out was we had to pay a percentage of what the value of the vehicle was. So we didn't know that up front, and it cost us a little bit of money, but I'm probably going to be selling that vehicle soon, but we'll still get our money back and make something off of it because it was valuable. It's very complex. A lot of that stuff is very complex.
To kind of like what Mark was kind of alluding to, if we look at like the fentanyl from 33.43 pounds to 10.59 pounds, I know you said it's just depending on, like, I guess the market, but overall, from your professional opinion, are we seeing fentanyl decreasing on the streets, like with the more hyper focus of enforcement against that?
It's really hit and miss. In a sense, it's seasonal because methamphetamines right now are being pushed more than what, you know, fentanyl is, but fentanyl's basically laced in just about every drug there is now. Whereas before it was more prevalent as just a fentanyl pill, but now it's mixed in with everything.
I see.
So the pills and different things in the different forms are worth more money on the street.
I see. So like your meth line there could potentially have
Yeah.
laced fentanyl in that line. I didn't realize that.
Yes,
I
but if
see.
you really look at how much drugs that is for 1 year for us to seize,
That's a lot.
it's really overwhelming, honestly.
Yeah.
For us to seize like 176 pounds of cocaine. Like you used to see that with marijuana, 500-600 pounds of marijuana, and that was what at the time the drug dealers were pushing. But now you're seeing 148 pounds of methamphetamines that's being seized.
Terrifying.
So it's, and
Well,
that's just.
I don't know if this is a typo or
At
not.
least
It says
LSD is a little
133 grams for cocaine last
To
year
pounds, yeah.
to 176
Is that
pounds.
accurate?
I don't know the answer to that, but I'll get it for you.
Okay.
It may be correct.
No, yeah, well, I
it
mean,
just
if
really
it is,
depends because
it's-
cocaine was a drug of the '90s.
Yeah.
That was the drug of the '90s, and you don't see it a lot anymore, but you do see it occasionally.
Well, there's probably some portion of those numbers that you're seeing in 24 and 25 versus, like you said, say 5 years ago, that's probably due to better enforcement too, right?
Oh, 100%.
Stronger enforcement.
That's what I was going to
because-
ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Because, when
not
we
to
first
belabor
started,
it, but-
when we didn't have a varsity narcotics unit when I come back here, and we implemented that, and we've grown off of that, and so you didn't see these seizures, and you wouldn't have seen Belmont seizing this amount because the officers weren't trained to do that, and they didn't have that function as an everyday. We had a detective, but we didn't have this unit. So our progression with our growth, and then you guys investing in us and putting officers, giving us officers an extra work. This has grown from not having anybody to this, and we're not going to stop. We're going to keep going, and we're going to get more stuff off the streets. That's the ultimate goal. I tell them to bust. I said I don't want to know what y'all are doing. Just bust them. Get everybody. That's by because I don't want to know what it is. Tell me about it if you want to, but just do your job and get all the drugs you can. Catch everybody. That's what I tell them.
Yeah.
Try to get those elusive LSD guys.
I'll move on. Crimes against persons went down from 141 to 88. Kidnapping 5 to 1. The thing I'd like to add about kidnapping, so the public understands, is there's not people getting kidnapped off the streets. 5 people didn't get kidnapped off the streets, and 1 person didn't get kidnapped off the streets. A lot of time that has to do with domestic assaults, where someone forcibly moves someone from one place to another against their will, as involved with the domestic violence stuff. We're heavily involved with the district attorney's office when it comes to domestic violence, and we do what's called a DAIL form. It fills out, and so we're actually getting a lot more bonds and heavier bonds on these people who are committing domestic violence. And a part of that is some of the crimes that they commit is kidnapping. So I don't want the public to think that there's a lot of people out here just kidnapping people off the streets. That's not the case. And our sex offenses did go up. And crimes against property, if you want me to go into any of those, just let me know. All right, well, I'll move on. Here's a graph showing some of the comparisons between 2024 and 2025. Some of the things did go up, like fraud, counterfeit property, and forgery went up. You can see that fraud went up just a little bit, and most of the others are decreased. And I'll get a little bit more into detail on the decreases and what those numbers look like in a minute. Overall crime decreased from 835 incidents in 2024 to 687 in 2025. So that's a 17.7% decrease in our overall crime rate. Our significant reductions in assaults, burglaries, and business robberies. Larceny alone dropped by 105 cases, accounted for most of the overall reduction. Fraud increased slightly from 97 to 98 cases. Sex offense went from 6 to 10. Motor vehicle thefts remained nearly unchanged. A lot of times when we're having our motor vehicle thefts, it's involved in some of the break-ins that we have from time to time of vehicles and people leaving their keys in their car or their items in their car. And robbery of a person was down slightly. Property crimes, vandalism, stolen property showed a moderate decline overall. Before I go into any more of that, I'd like to really give a shout out to my people for having the ability to continuously every year, even with staffing levels in the past year, to be able to reduce the crime rate and do such a great job. I think that they need to be recognized for that. I can give direction, but they're out here doing the job, and I'd really like to thank them for the job that they've done to continually, year after year, even though with growth, we're still able to, make the crime rate go down every year. And I think that just speaks volumes for, what kind of job they do every day.
Hey, Chief, just to piggyback off of that, because I was going to say, I think I recall each time it's been a decrease.
It has.
Is it, since I've sat on council, is it possible to get as far back data as like just a line graph in regards to the trajectory and the trend of that?
I
Just
can
to
go-
see. I mean, not like imperative, not important. I think it would just be interesting to see, particularly how you're saying overall crime decreased from 835, not to break it down because I'm sure that's a lot of effort, but just to see what the trend is. Because you call it out pretty well. We're growing as a population quite a bit, but our crime is going down. So I just
Just see a trend like
Yeah.
over a longer period, say
Yeah.
5, 6, 7 years,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
I like a challenge, so I'll look into that.
I appreciate it, Chief.
I-85 North Traffic Collision Summary, personal injury collisions declined 13 to 11, so that was a 15.4% reduction. And then property damage only collisions showed a substantial improvement, decrease from 60 to 29, and then that's a 51.7% reduction. Overall, the total number of collisions on I-85 decreased from 73 to 40, so that's a 45.2% decrease or reduction. And what that means for your personal injury collisions also, to bring the fire department into it, is that's less times the fire department's having to respond to the interstate as well, so that's a good thing overall for everyone. And then the 85 South traffic represents a 66.7% reduction, and then property damage only collisions a 75.8% reduction, and then overall total number of collisions is a reduction of 73.8. These are some of the things that our training, and this by all means does not take into effect everything that we train on. We train on much more than this. This is just basically the highlights of some of the mandatory training and different trainings that we do either throughout the year or we heavily involved in sending every one of our officers through these trainings. And crisis intervention, CIT, state mandated in-service training. Every officer who's sworn has to get 24 hours of in-service mandated training. There's so many different classes, and then we pick the Chief's Choice classes for us to take. And we do driving every year because we don't want to be a liability, because driving and firearms are probably our two biggest liability things. So we train on them as much as we can. So we do driving every year. And then verbal judo de-escalation, disability awareness training, racial intelligence training, dangerous crossroads. And what dangerous crossroads is like people who show up at the different facilities and try to invoke you to do something wrong with the Second Amendment rights of people. So we actually send every one of our officers through this training to make sure that when someone comes to the agency or anywheres and they try to provoke us or something, we know how to handle it, where they can be and where they can't be as far as public places and all of that. And so far, if you'll look on YouTube, actually Captain Sherrill left, but he's actually in one of the videos where they come out and do all of that stuff and try to get you to say you can't be here, you can't have this gun and all of that. Some officers don't pass the test, but we're really good at passing it so far, knock on wood. Every supervisor has completed or currently is enrolled in our Public Safety Leadership Training Institute, which some of you know Major Brown from CPCC. She came and spoke about the program before, so we want to send everyone through leadership training. Force-on-force scenario-based instructor training, active shooter training, collision avoidance, driving, stop sticks is the things, when people are chasing cars, officers have to get in chases. We have stop sticks. We have so many different stop sticks to deploy, and so that maybe slows everyone down and minimize the risk for everyone in the community. A lot of times, different people are chasing people down the interstate. If the only two requirements is training and then supervisor permission to be able to deploy the stop sticks. And we've stopped a lot of vehicles that way, and then slow people down, and it deflates their tires in about 6 seconds. Conduct training, CALEA policy training. Everyone at the agency is included in the CALEA process, so it's inclusive for everyone. And then TASER, OC, and Toxilizer is if you get DWI, that's the test. So our officers are mandatory; they have to do the NTOX training. And then incident command FEMA training, there's different FEMA trainings for different levels of supervision. So we all were mandated by the feds to, have to have those trainings for different levels that you're on in the agency. Advanced and intermediate certificates, customer service through emotional intelligence training, and then National Center for Missing and Exploited Children certifications throughout the whole agency. We're one of only 2 agencies in North Carolina who have the entire agency as being called overachievers, but we wanted to make sure that everyone was certified in this, and so we ended up being number 2 agencies in the whole state. 2025 department accomplishments: maintain our CALEA accreditation status, complete our annual CALEA review file by the compliance service members, worked and held over 30 sponsored events, including, I won't go into them, I mean, everyone's pretty much familiar with that. One thing I'll say is I am proud of the first annual Gaston County Faith in Blue. It's something we started here with Faith in Blue. It's a great initiative, and we actually did a countywide initiative with Faith in Blue this past year. So I'm super excited about that. It's a huge accomplishment to actually take that and build off of it and continue it. And then the one last thing is we had one person complete the 2025 departmental awards achievements, included multiple accommodations for graduate of administrative officers management program. Even though it was from NC State, it is a highly commendable leadership training that Matt Sherrill actually completed. And I didn't know if I was going to make it through all of the training, but it was very extensive. And actually, even though it is NC State, no pun intended, if anyone would like to see his awards, his awards really do look cool. He's got the big wolf, and it's standing up. It really is cool.
I just saw Miles taking some notes over there. Might be a
I wasn't pointing him out. I was just saying, no pun intended.
Expect a phone call in the morning.
But no, it really was. It's a very extensive and long online program, and he completed it with honors. And it's a huge achievement for our leadership in the agency. It's literally for mid-level administrators for leadership training that teaches them even more than what we've taught. And we try to be involved in customer service and leadership training all around as much. With leadership training, you can't get enough. You never should stop training on leadership. And so we try to seek out different aspects and different things in leadership so we can advance some of these mid-level administrators and put them build their success road for them, in other words, by continuing that leadership training, so that one day they can lead the agency eventually. So I'll move on from that. CALEA, just a little brief explanation of CALEA. The Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies is defined as a voluntary process used to identify agencies' level of professionalism as measured by standards established by experts and practitioners in the law enforcement field, awarded to public safety agencies that have demonstrated compliance with complete CALEA standards and have been awarded CALEA accreditation by the Commission. Belmont Police Department was awarded and maintains the gold standard, which includes 459 standards, and that's not just 459 standards. That goes into more complex standards. There's standards inside standards inside standards. And so we were also picked as a CALEA as a model agency. That's internationally, not just here locally, but internationally. We're picked by CALEA as a model agency for our efficient processes. Like I say, everyone's involved in that process, but Tyler Graham, who is here now, he leads that charge, and he stays on everyone. And so I'm proud to say that through the good job and leadership of Tyler Graham, we have maintained and still achieve our CALEA accreditation status. And this is a voluntary process. We pay them to come in and spot check us to make sure we're compliant and we're doing what we say we are. As being a professional agency, we have to do certain things. And not only are we doing those, we're a model agency for other people as the processes that we've used to complete the processes that they require. And we stand above that. So it's a very good achievement. And this is just some of the calls initiated by officers or citizens. If there's any of those you'd like me to go into, let me know.
So we've completely done away with careless and reckless vehicles, apparently.
Probably not during the snow, but yes, I guess so.
Can't wait to see the 2026 one where you get one for sledding.
Yeah. Well, right. Yeah. Some of our officers will have to write their self-ticket for that one. some of the other ones. I'll give you
Charlie is the offender.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Alleged. Yeah, so I'll give you a minute to digest this before I move on. All right. So here's some more numbers.
This is not the Belmont from 20 years ago, is it?
And we do. You'll see that we do a lot of special checks. On some of our special checks, you know, 'cause you see the average is down just slightly, but we do a lot of special checks for the businesses and different things. And we have a strategy behind why we do that, but it also makes sure that we're checking people's businesses, we're checking people's residents while they're out of town, and making sure that everything's the way it should be. We have other strategies involving that, like when things get broken into, it narrows down the time frames for us to look at and view body or different cameras and surveillance cameras to see, you know, it don't take as long for our officers to go and view. If we check downtown and then 5 minutes after that it was broken into, it helps us narrow down when it was broken into, plus narrows down the time frame for the review of the footage, and helps us with narrowing down like a suspect vehicle and things versus having to go back through 8 or 9 hours of video. So we do that. It's a multi-purpose reason. So, and at the bottom, the disclaimer: these numbers reflect calls for service, and they're not reflective of actual incident reports that we've taken. And that's all I have. Y'all have any questions?
Any questions for
No,
Chief?
just a
No, good
fantastic
job.
job.
Thank you,
again.
Chief. Great job.
Really appreciate
Yeah.
everything you guys do.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, so we will be moving into closed session pursuant to NC General Statute 143-318.11A3 to consult with the city's attorney to protect attorney-client privilege, as well as the amended edition of Gen Stat 143-318.11A5, establishing or instructing staff or agents on the public body's negotiating position for acquisition of real estate or employment contracts. This also will include Finance Director Jared Piles for both and Assistant City Manager Kevin Kraus for both. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to move into closed session.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Alex, seconded by Charlie. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are now in closed session. We'll take a short recess to let the gallery clear.